Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland. And we're continuing our trek through all of Stanley Kubrick's films, and this week we're looking at his most mainstream Hollywood-type film, Spartacus. All 3 hours and 20 minutes of it. But the nice thing about watching at home is you could skip the entrance, the intermission, the outro, all those things, and save you maybe 10 minutes. Still 3 hours, but we're going to get there. And if you haven't tuned into Welcome to the Wasteland before, we have 3 segments on the show where I start with coming attractions for the week that this video is releasing, which is going to be July 16th. And then we also have our feature film, which we'll be talking about, I'm Spartacus. And then I give some recommendations at the end of the show based off of some of the new films that I've been watching and some of the films that I've been checking off my watch list. So we have a lot to talk about this week, a really long film to get through. Is this going to be the longest episode of me flying solo? I don't know. We're going to find out, but I appreciate you tuning in. So we're going to get started with our coming attractions and some of the things that we have coming this week. July 14th, so 2 days before this video drops, we have Gunpowder Milkshake from Netflix, which has Karen Gillan in it. That seems interesting. You have Escape Room Tournament of Champions, which I remember seeing that movie, the first one, and when by the end you're just like, what? This is giant universal kind of conspiracy, and now it's continuing into a sequel. Space Jam, we're getting another Space Jam with LeBron. The third part of Fear Street, you have... This one was real close. Roadrunner, a film about Anthony Bourdain. That was really close to being my pick for coming attraction this week because I feel like it's going to be a really emotional journey, but I had to pick Pig. And this new film, I am so excited for this. And spoiler alert, I've already gotten a chance to see it because I got a screener, but I won't get into details because that's not what we're here for. But why was this my most anticipated film coming from Neon? Nick Cage. When Nick Cage pops up in a Neon, IFC, A24, something film like that, or a mainstream film that you expect he's going to try real hard and do something special with it, I'm excited. And this is an auteur film about a truffle hunter whose pig is pignapped. And he must go trying to find him in the city of Portland, and he must confront this mythos around his former life. And Nick Cage is a great actor. He will do anything, and sometimes he'll sleepwalk through things, but he always adds something to his movies, whether it's Willy's Wonderland or this. And this film is a special kind of experience that once I saw the trailer and heard about this concept, I'm like, here's my money, give me Pig, and Nick Cage. So honestly, that's why it's my coming attraction for this week. It might seem odd with some of the other films coming out this week. I know I don't know how excited people are about Space Jam: A New Legacy, because did they really need to make this? How many years later? Space Jam was one of the first movies I saw in a theater. I was 4 in 1995. And bam, nostalgia, we got another sequel. But Pig, go check that out. Show that movie some love. It's going to be something special. So there's your coming attraction for the week of July 16th. Now time to shift gears into our feature of the week, which is Spartacus. And Spartacus is an interesting film in Stanley Kubrick's filmography because this is by far his most mainstream film. And it's a studio film. Kirk Douglas got him to be involved in the film. They needed to replace the director. Kirk Douglas is like, hey Stanley, after working on Passive Glory and being like, hey, can you take over? And bam, next day he's on set. And Kubrick had some clashes with Kirk Douglas. They had different views. This film is also very historic in the fact that it broke the blacklist. Dalton Trumbo wrote this, and Kirk Douglas making sure his name was put on it. And he was blacklisted at the time. So this was screw you to the blacklist, and bam, Spartacus, 1960. And there's a lot of talent going into this film between Stanley Kubrick, Dalton Trumbo, Kirk Douglas, Lord Laurence Olivier, Charles Laughton, who directed one film, The Night of the Hunter, which I love, and Gene Simmons, Peter Ustinov, and we'll get to some of their performances, but this is an impressive grouping of talent going into this film. And right at the center you have Kubrick. And you could easily be this doesn't feel like a Kubrick film. But there's definitely Kubrick here. And there's some layers to this film. There's some sexual innuendos and inferences that you wouldn't expect in a film like this, and I don't think would be in a film like this if it weren't for Stanley Kubrick. Oh, the bath scene with Tony Curtis, who I didn't mention yet, and Laurence Olivier. And do you like snails or do you like oysters? Because you could like both. And it's just oh my god, that is Kubrick all over it. And that feels like something that would be in a Kubrick film. And obviously this is much more of a mainstream kind of big sword and sandal film, but what I appreciate about this film in general is that it isn't just basically this birthed Braveheart and Gladiator. If this film didn't exist, I don't think either of those would exist. Obviously, Gladiator's a much closer connection because of just the setting and gladiators. But Gladiator never quite gets to the revolution part. So that aspect of it, and the Spartacus is the William Wallace and of the story, and you have those influences, and I feel there's more, especially compared to Gladiator, there's a lot more time focused on character in this film at 3 hours and 20 minutes, and politics and stuff like that. Obviously they talk about it in Gladiator, but they really sink their teeth into it here, and there's some slower moments, but it doesn't feel slow. It feels it's a different feel, and Kubrick's able to balance all of that so well in this film, because this is a 3 hour and 20 minute film. It does not feel like it. It's brisk. I never felt bored. I just feel engrossed in the story, these characters, the setting, everything going on, the performances. But this film, from the surface level, feels a lot more commercial for a Kubrick film. And especially because he follows this up with Lolita. Yeah. Very different speed. But there's all those undercurrents, like I mentioned in this film, that really work and add depth to this film. Whether it's the political turmoil weaving between Crassus and Gracchus and Caesar, and you just have Spartacus leading his rebellion throughout all of that, and there's these layers of political intrigue that layer themselves into this film and add that depth. And it really works, and it's intriguing, it's engrossing, I cared. And to give you all some background, I took 5 years of Latin, so I learned a lot about ancient Rome, and my great-grandfather was from Rome. I'm an Italian-American, and there's Roman blood in me. And this always fascinated me about the Roman Empire, and there's a certain depth in terms of the intrigue that it goes into Roman culture here, and politics, and the system, because this is leading up to Caesar taking over. I learned about Crassus and Gracchus. They were along with Caesar, they were the three men running Rome. And there's that tension in this film, and you have that while all layered on top of the fact that you have Spartacus and his story, his love story, his courageous rebellious story, and you have all of that all working together in tandem. And the scope here, Barry Lyndon, Full Metal Jacket, this. These are really the only films that Kubrick really dives into action, like scaled action. And even here, there's a choice at times to avoid showing the actual action and the brutality and framing it in a different way. A perfect example. So Spartacus and one of the other gladiators is going to fight to the death. And you have, it's Woody Strode who plays Draba. And they're sitting in their cage waiting to go fight. And instead of showing all the brutality of the fight going on in the little arena, the camera's at Spartacus and you see his reaction. You hear the clang, the struggle of the gladiators and him internalizing what's to come for him, his fate, as he's making eye contact with Woody Strode's character, Draba. And they're both coming to this realization like death is at their doorstep. And that kind of choice is very Kubrick and not, like if this was a Michael Bay movie, they would be like all up in all that action and stuff like that. But Kubrick is taking that different approach to it and seeing it in a different way. You don't see a whole lot of like the big action. Obviously you see the rebellion. It's violent. It's well choreographed. It's extremely well shot. The whole entire film is. It's Kubrick, mind you. So the scope is captured, the intimacy when there is intimacy, the close-ups or the middle range shots of characters really giving these actors a chance to act. And you have some of the greatest. You have Laurence Olivier in this film. You have Kirk Douglas. You have great performers in this film. The production design and the costumes is top notch. You're in it. You're engrossed in this ancient Rome setting, and there's no mixing that up. You're not watching a film. You're in it. It's so well put together. And what's so interesting about this film is, and especially because so many, and I don't know if this was like much more on Trumbo's end of like writing the script, but there's a tenderness, there's a love story between Kirk Douglas's Spartacus and Gene Simmons' Varinia, and I buy it. Their chemistry is off the charts. The use of the music, there's a dynamic score in this film that really works in whatever way it needs to work from composer Alex North. And there's a tenderness, a sweetness to the music when they're on screen together, and it's beautiful, and you care. I felt like, okay, I'm invested in them. I want to see them get away. I want to see them have their child and grow and live a real life. And there's a tenderness here that you don't see in other Kubrick films. Everything's so cold and distant. This film's different. You get that emotion, and it's really meaningful. Then you have the violence, which when he does show the violence, he does not shy away from it. It's bloody. There's one particular shot where Draba, like first off, Hunger Games 100% got this from Spartacus, where Draba eats his trident up at the spectators, and just like what Katniss does, for all of you Hunger Games fans out there. And he starts going up trying to kill Crassus, and he gets shot in the back with a javelin, and then Crassus just like takes a dagger out and like stabs him in the back of the neck, and blood splatters all over Laurence Olivier's face, and like that's so impactful. Like, I didn't expect that. And this is 1960, mind you. So that's pretty violent and bloody and explicit to show. And, of course, Kubrick's not going to shy away from that. And he doesn't, and it's very impactful. The violence is impactful. It's well-shot violence. It's well-shot action, when you can consider it action. But in general, it's really impactful and emotional in the way that it's shot. And that's what Kubrick's able to do with it. And like I said before, the politics, the intrigue, the layers here add such a basin for a bigger cultural perspective. Because these political games that go on in this film still exist today. You could see this today. This wouldn't surprise you if this crap was happening today. Because it does, all the time. especially in America with our political system, you see this backstabbing, these games between Gracchus and Crassus and Caesar, all playing their different angles. And that's all this life that builds and what is Rome. And you have that flip side of what Spartacus wants. He doesn't want Rome. He wants to be gone from Rome. He wants a real life. He wants away from this corruption, this degradation and decadence. And there's a disdain there that Spartacus has. And that's an interesting aspect of this film that I really appreciate. And because there's a passion there. And like I said before, this film is brisk. I never once felt bored during these 3 hours and 20 minutes. I did skip the intermissions and stuff like that, mind you. But like the actual film, it's so well paced. It moves. Everything feels important. And I feel like everything there is doing what it needs to be done and working in a way that every aspect of this film works. And you never feel like, oh, skip this part, I want to get back to that part. Because it all works and it feels like you're invested in every scene because there's things to invest in every scene. And that's why I feel like it moves along so well. And that's from the writing, the direction, the acting, everything firing on all cylinders. And getting into the acting, you have Kirk Douglas, who is a movie star. He's there. He is chiseled out of stone. He's not the biggest guy. And he's not traditionally the most, handsome guy. He's more rugged. He has that dimpled chin. He's... Ugh. And there's a boiling intensity under him. But what's so amazing is he doesn't have a whole lot of lines in this film. Spartacus doesn't talk a whole lot. There's plenty of other talkers in this film. He's physical. His physicality, his acting with his eyes, his face, his body. And Douglas excels so much in that way in this film that you care so much. And when he does talk, it's in those more intimate and raw scenes with Gene Simmons, who's also great chemistry with Douglas and charisma, and they work so well together in this film. Then you have Crassus, Laurence Olivier. Boy, does he make that whole entire thing with Tony Curtis work, who has a strange accent. Let's just put that out there. But Olivier makes that whole thing about snails and oysters work. And he's one of the greatest of all time. You can't argue that. And his acting is impeccable. And he is such a great antagonist here because you have an understanding of what he's trying to do, even if you don't agree with it. And he just has presence. Charles Lawton as Gracchus, whenever he's on the screen, he's such a delight. And he has a presence. It's a very different kind of presence. There's a smugness about it on some level, but there's an earnestness about it. He knows his flaws. He knows he likes ladies. But there's something positive and good about him on some level. And then, probably the most dynamic and interesting character in this film is Peter Ustinov's character. And Ustinov plays Batitus. And boy is Ustinov acting the hell out of this movie. He's just going for it. And at every turn, he has a dynamic way of interacting with the other characters, engaging with his dialogue. He's just engrossing on screen, and it's so great. And I loved every second he was on screen, whether he's being overly confident and flaunting his position, and then when he has no position anymore, being groveling and also a coward, but being pushed to do something brave. And he has a redemptive arc, and it's very interesting to see in this film. And then one of the greatest scenes in all the film: you all will be crucified unless one of you tells me you'll get to live as slaves, but live lives, but you must tell me which one of you is Spartacus. And you see Kirk Douglas is ready, and he stands up and is about to say it, and then Tony Curtis is like, I'm Spartacus. And then everybody, I'm Spartacus, I'm Spartacus. And the tears going down Douglas's face in this scene, like, it's an iconic line. Everybody knows the line, but do they feel the context of the film and the fact that he connected with all of these people and brought so much hope to their lives that they'd be willing to die to protect him and protect what he started. And that brings tears to Douglas's eyes, and it impacts so well for the audience. Just beautifully shot. Allowing all the actors their close-ups and then just ending with Douglas's tear going down his face. I'm Spartacus. And, of course, it's tragic. The ending, crucifixions, and the last moments of Spartacus and his wife, the mother of his child, Verinia, what they share last, and her final words to him are so tragic and sad. And it's just, wow. And this film ends on such an emotional piece that I don't know if you really, like, Sword and Sandal films are so big in spectacle, and there's very few of them that reach, like, Ben-Hur level, where there's just a catharticness about the end of that film with faith. And here with the tragedy that we see at the end of this film. And this film is so incredible. And this is like the year after Ben-Hur. Ben-Hur came out in 59. This comes out in 60. What a time for Sword and Sandal films. We don't really get that anymore. Like the last big scale, like Gods of Egypt, I think. The Ten Commandments adaptation from Ridley Scott, which I hadn't seen. You get, like, Gladiator, obviously. But, like, I love Gladiator. And as an entertaining film, I love Gladiator so much. But there's something extra about this. Something deeper about this. And the influence it has on Gladiator and Braveheart. And that lasting feeling on big budget, big scope spectacles of Hollywood. This is something special, and it's interesting because Kubrick never really did any of this again. Because then, from now on, and for the rest of our journey through Kubrick's career, on here on Welcome to the Wasteland is, we're getting weird. Weird. And that's the thing about Kubrick. He was very idiosyncratic, his thing. This was not his thing. This was a collaboration. And there's a lot of tension here behind the scenes, and it really brought something special to the screen. I love Spartacus. This is, I think, the third time I've watched this film, and this time watching it, I'm like, dang, I really love this film. So if you haven't seen it, find 3 hours and 20 minutes in your busy schedules and do yourself a favor and check this one out. So those are my thoughts on Spartacus, and now we're going to shift gears to our recommendations. And what I have to recommend, first off, the new film that I've seen in the past week that I felt like made the biggest impact on me is a new horror film from Jaco Bauer called Gaia. And this, like, Gaia, goddess of the earth. This film is about a nature ranger who gets injured and taken in by these two survivalists and dealing with these strange entities of the earth, strange, like, fungi-related creatures. And it's deep and meaningful. It's creepy and unnerving. Character-wise might not be the most interesting and has like an underwhelming romantic subplot, but it makes you think. It creeps you out. There's a lot of imagination here. And great ideas and beautifully executed in a technical way. Gaia is a really cool film. If you get a chance to rent this on VOD, do yourself a favor. It's worth it. And then my recommendation from my watch list was Tokyo Godfathers. And I had seen this being shown in theaters years ago. I'm like, I never got around to seeing it. And like, I really wanted to check this out. It's about these three random homeless people who connect to protect this baby that they find. And all the craziness that they go on this journey of trying to get this baby back to their parents. And it is great. And the characters make it. The three characters you have, these three homeless people, are fantastic. They're dynamic. Their characterization. It's so much fun. And really interacting with that is engaging and beautiful. And you have this film really firing on all cylinders, and I really appreciated the animation, the world. It gets kind of crazy towards the end and deep and dark at times, but it's a really impactful film that I really appreciated, and I loved it. It's going to be joining this collection here at some point, so definitely recommend Tokyo Godfathers. But that's all I have for you this week. I hope you go out and check out Pig when it comes out in theaters. Invest some time to take on Spartacus, and go rent Gaia, try it out, and check out Tokyo Godfathers. So, plenty of cool movies to talk about this week, and I hope you enjoyed it. And next week I'm going to be flying solo again, which I believe will be my last one flying solo for Kubrick, because everything else I have somebody lined up to join me on the show, so I'm going to be flying solo talking about Lolita. Be an interesting time. I hope you all tune in next week. But thank you all, as always, for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.